And we'd like to welcome everybody back to the Football's Family Podcast. And I guess if you hear in the background, somebody is weed eating outside. So that is what's going on. We just went through some bad storms up here in Tennessee. Uh, Several people were hurt, a few people were killed. So continue to keep them in your thoughts and prayers up here in Middle Tennessee and other parts of the state as well and the country. But today we're going to continue our look at May being Mental Health Awareness Month. And I knew when I invited this guest on that he will not only bless you, but he'll bless me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. My name is Zaquan Kemp. That's Zaquan Kemp, and I'm from Orlando, Florida. But I recently graduated from Heritage Christian University.
Yeah, Zaquan, I was there. I looked up there and I said, I know that guy right there. And I said to my daughters, I said, that's one of the coolest guys you'll ever meet right there. I got to meet Zaquan in October of 2022. I
Mhm.
spoke at Heritage, and he was one of the first people to come up and give me a bear hug. And then the next time I spoke, I was like, I know this guy. Oh, I do know this guy. And it's been pretty good since then, my friend. I am very
Yes, sir.
proud of you, very impressed. Graduating from any university is hard, and what you did proved that not only you have great heart, great mind, but you stuck with it. And I'm
Mhm.
very proud of you. But the reason I ask you on here today is how old are you, my friend?
I'm 20. I just recently turned 23.
23.
Yes, sir.
So you're in a different generation. I'm a little bit older than you. You're in a I say a little bit. Uh you're in a different generation than I was. I grew up in the 80s. Mental health wasn't talked about as much, if at all. And
Mhm.
we would call people crazy if they struggled with things. And now I think in this generation, it might be viewed differently. So tell me, what is your view of what mental health is?
My view of mental health, it it's important. Bottom line, it's important to talk about. It's important to discuss. It's important to uh, Christians, non-Christians, people of any generation. I think it's important to have that conversation, and I think mental health also is one of the things that I struggle with sometimes too. I'm not gonna lie. The last month has been on the go, on the go, on the go, on the go. But I don't want to start there with the journey of mental health in itself. I want to give a look at my life a little bit, if that's okay, Jeremy. I would
Yeah.
love to do that. Um, I grew up in an environment where mom raised three of us by herself majority of my life, and she's a big inspiration to me. And she had all of us while in school, while getting two master's degrees, while getting all these other things. And she's been an inspiration to me.
Well, was
But
she there at the graduation?
she was,
I
she was.
might have seen her, but I didn't put two and two together. I know she's
Yeah,
proud of you.
she's a little bit shorter than I am. I'm just kidding. Well, she is, but she's an amazing lady with a good heart, and that's where I get my heart from. But I'll tell you, once um, my first stepdad, he was around. Man, he was abusive, like not physical, but more towards mental and just emotional abusive. And I don't want to uh, go in details, but one of the things that he destroyed me on was my childhood. And what I mean by that, I mean like the first time I was ever introduced to something that's not appropriate for kids to know about at my age of being 8, and I would say, or not 8, but maybe like 11. And I would say that ruined my mental health, but that ruined my childhood as well. And so that was the first part of it. And my dad not being there, being actively in my life, being in and out, in and out, in and out. No shame to him. I love him to death. But that also kind of ruined my mental health as well because I've always been taught, I'm sure you heard this before, Jeremy, never cry, never show emotion. You're a guy. work, work, work. Just get the emotion out of you, pull it out of you. And I would say that ruined me. My most of my relationships has been ruined by that mentality. I don't communicate very well my emotions as far as it goes. I'm trying to learn how to do better through the help of not Jeremy, Jeffrey Brothers and Bill Agents and all them. That all those guys have been helping me pull that out of me. And since 12 years old, I haven't cried one tear, not one tear. And when my grandmother passed away, I didn't cry one tear. That was a few years ago, and I know what it's like to be in a place where, like you said, people who are and back in your generation, people would say that you're crazy, for having mental issues. But I will say during the time period before I finished my book I wrote and published, I when I was 18, I just got out of high school. But I just started my second semester of college at a community college in Florida. And I remember I was going through a breakup. Never get antidepressants from a regular doctor. That ruined me. And uh, I've had suicidal thoughts, had dreams about my niece dying in my arms. I've had depression and like deep depression. I know what it was like to be alone, to be in a room. If you feel like you're in a prison of your mind, that's what it feels like when you have really bad mental health issues. And I remember one time I was like, you know what? I'm going to end it all. I'm going to end it all. Luckily, I had good friends who say, "No, you're not." And one of my friends reached out to her dad, and her dad called the school I was at and everything. And the dad, uh, cops got involved, and I was sent to a mental hospital. That was going to grief in itself. That was the first time I ever really grieved over losing myself. Because going with them with the hospital, you're laying right. I laid right next to a drug dealer, or not drug dealer, but druggie. Someone was rehabbing and everything and trying to do better. And I remember I said to him, I said, "Look, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this." I got visits from my mom, visits from some people from church, and it was uplifting. But that wasn't the main thing. They asked me, "What do I need? What do I want?" I said, "Give me a pencil or coloring pencil. Give me paper and give me a Bible. That's all I need." And and on the paperwork, it said, uh, "Seems calm," which is true. I want them to seem calm. I want to see calm because I want to get out of that place. But one of the things I would say is that even though I was in a place where you hear screaming day in and day out, and you experience, I won't say prison, but prison of the mind type of place where you're just on a routine schedule. You don't know what time is going, what you don't know what time is going to be, or what time it is, and all that stuff. You don't know. You see the sunlight coming up, but you can't go outside. You have to stay inside. And it wasn't a bad facility, but that's the only thing I will say. I really wish I had more sunlight. Um, but I've learned how to find God's peace in the storms, being in an environment you're thrown in. And
Can I ask you something that it may come across insensitive, but I'm not.
yes, sir.
Okay. Obviously I am white.
Mhm.
You're not.
Mhm.
God just painted us different colors is what it is.
It's,
I don't believe in racism in the sense like we're different people. We're the
mhm.
same. We're created from the same place. We just have different colors.
Mhm.
I know and I hate to use this term, but it's going to come out and it'll make sense. White community.
Mhm.
mental health is viewed one way. May I ask you how in the Black community, for what you've experienced, how is mental health viewed?
It's viewed, at least from my standpoint, uh, not at all. It's not talked about regularly. At least what I experienced, not really talked about regularly. Um, but it's something in my family where we're now talking about it more and more. But from what I've seen, no one really talks about in the Black community their mental health or the issues because it all gets shut down normally.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure if you experienced the same thing too, but more or less it gets shot down.
You know, you telling me that there's really not that big of a difference. It's not that big of a difference. I think the biggest difference between you and me is I'm 21 years older than you, and I
Mhm,
I went through the 80s, which was different
mhm,
than what you went through, and that's the big difference. But it's still, and you know this. I mean, you experienced this. It's still hard to cope with how society views it.
mhm,
Um, I I went through, I was suicidal too. And I've told people that it's not something I'm ashamed of. It's not something like I would like to do again. Obviously, you wouldn't
mhm,
either. It's scary. But I went through medication through a doctor and they tried.
mhm.
Now I'm on medication from counsel, from, the people that do this.
Yeah.
And I can find out, Zaquan, that I am one of the medicines I'm on, my body metabolizes too fast. So you want to know it's fun is like you got to pick and choose, you got to find the right stuff. And boy, if you come off any antidepressant or anti-anxiety medicine, it is awful.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is awful. I missed
Yes.
one day one time. And I remember this because I had, of all things, I had the Spider-Man game on PS4. Great game. I couldn't sleep. So I played that from like 10 o'clock till 5 o'clock the next morning. And I made sure I was at Walmart at 9 o'clock to get my medicine. I didn't
Mhm,
miss it after that. So what you tell me, is that a motivating factor to you to you're going to go, are you going into preaching or youth ministry?
youth ministry.
Okay, that's a good way to start. Seriously, you and I could talk later on about my experience with that, but I'm telling you,
Mhm,
with what you do with that, make sure if you do talk about mental health, and I encourage you to do that,
mhm,
make sure you don't leave it open-ended in the
mhm,
sense that you know this about it better than anybody. Anybody could diagnose somebody by 2 or 3 words.
mhm,
And people's like, well, I've got this or I got that. You and I are not qualified to do that. So just be careful. Encourage kids to talk to their parents, encourage kids to talk to people.
mhm.
But there are people like Mr. Brothers, who is amazing, amazing guy. He can talk a lot better
100.
than what we can. I was grateful I had him last semester, not this past semester, but the semester before that.
Mhm.
And I thought this guy right here is going to tear me up because I was like, I'm reading his syllabus. He is about the you've seen the syllabus. You know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. He is one of the nicest, gentlest guys that I've ever, and he let me talk about some things for 20 minutes in one of his classes. And he sat there and listened. And I
Yes.
thought, this is the kind of guy I want to be like. Dr.
Mhm,
Bajents too, but Mr.
mhm.
Brothers, who will be doctor sooner or later.
Yeah. Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
I was and I'll tell you what, that's who you had. Are you going to go back way off the subject? Are you going to go and finish your degree, or are you staying with your associates for right now?
Oh no, I'm gonna go continue my degree. That's not, that's out of the question because my mom was like, you need to go.
But you get to do that online in Conyers, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do. I do, which is good.
Well, let me say this before we keep going. I expect Zaquan Kemp to walk whenever that may be, and Lord willing, if I'm around, I will be there. Just let me know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But what you experienced in your life, that you made through life, do you know who Toby Mac is?
Yes, sir. I do.
Okay, DC Talk, Toby Mac. He has a song called scars. And there's a line in it that says, "Scars come from living." My daughter loves him because she says he married a beautiful woman from Jamaica. It's like, yeah, he did. He absolutely did. And she's so excited because Jamaican and my daughter is Latina. They have very similar skin color.
Hmm.
She's like, I look like her. I was like, well, maybe if you were in your 40s, you would look like her, but right now you're 11. So, but it says scars come from living, and you know better than anybody else. And people listening probably get this, that every one of us has scars. I had Ben and Travis on Wednesday,
Hmm.
this past Wednesday, which would have been the 8th.
Hmm.
And what they were talking about came from a different perspective than you. You went through the insides. They're on the outside talking to people, help them get through it.
Hmm.
What do you think your scars are going to do when it comes to helping other people?
That's a good question, Jeremy. And I actually have a sermon that's called Our Scars Tell a Story. And uh, I believe that I never shared the mental hospital story before in front of a podcast at all or sermon. But I believe in what you explained earlier about how you're not ashamed to talk about your suicidal thoughts. I believe when people see the confidence behind you and the you not being ashamed of what you've been through, people will respect you more, but also people reach out more to you and be like, I struggle with the same thing. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And what you mentioned about having talked with the youth about mental health, brother, that's one of the first thing I'd mention. Look, if any of you are going to something, let me know. However, if something I cannot handle, we have resources outside of that. It will help you further. And I'll also say that showing scars, you're not lying to yourself. You're not lying to yourself at all. You're showing who you are through your scars and what you've been through. You know, people throw around this word testimony. This is my testimony. This is my story or whatnot. But it's also just you showing who you are and why you became a Christian and why you became just a follower after Christ and everything. And I'm just taking it back right now, trying not to cry right now, but it's those scars open up wounds. You know, I've been through 3 breakups in the past. Well, I won't say the years, but I went through one last year that was horrendous for me, and that's one of the things where I'm just like trying to get better at and everything, trying to heal, and the whole part of mental health issues is the healing process, and that's one of the things I will say. There's mental health issues are like onions. There are layers to it, but there's also the core that you need to dig deeper, cut deeper, go deeper, and until you see the root of what's causing you depression, what's causing you and have the anxiety, what's causing you to um, be all have these issues, and not make a lot of it, but just find out what's the source behind it. And through false promises of my father, which he's a good man, I'm not knocking it. And but the things that he done when I was younger has an effect on me now as an adult, to where I'm at a point where you have to prove to me I can trust you, because I can't go by your word anymore because of that trauma I had when I was younger. And there are some times you probably play video games to decompress, and that's what I do too. You know, I love video games. That helped me decompress and escape from this reality, this world. And I'm thankful enough to have the scars that I have to show people that you can make it. You can make it. And yeah.
Do you most of my games though have not GTA is not a decompression game. It's just not. Uh you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um what you did right then, and I'm sorry had to get up and close the door because somebody's mowing now. Um what you did right there is in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but I imagine some people share it as well, is the epitome, is the example of what a man is. Uh I don't like okay, let me give you a little background. I was in ROTC in high school and I messed up. I was staff sergeant, I messed up and I went up to the sergeant who was a retired military sergeant. You know how it is. You who are in military, maybe this is you, maybe you experience it. It's just the way it is. I'm not bad, good or bad, but I apologize. He said, never apologize. It's weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at this like, you're telling me that when I acknowledge that I made a mistake and I will try to fix it, that's weakness. To me, that is the hardest thing that a guy or a woman, it doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
could do, is to acknowledge that they did something wrong, to take responsibility for it, and then to move on for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this idea in our culture, and it's not new. It's not new at all. You read any of the older books from 18, 1700s, and you'll see that there's people who they will never admit, and people today will never admit that they're wrong because they don't like to be told they're wrong and don't want to admit that they're wrong. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, if a person can say, I am wrong, I need help, or I need help, whatever it may be, that's a sign of strength because they have a mental
That's
ability
right.
to think these things through.
That's right.
You have at your disposal, and I don't know the congregation at Conyers, but I'm sure that they have alumni relations at Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping to experience that myself next year. Uh, I'm ready to walk, my friend. I'm ready
Yeah,
to do it.
well, I'll be there next year.
Well, let's do it. I expect I'll hold you to that. Now, if Mr. Brothers will let me get through this semester, we'll see how that is. Uh, but you have at your disposal people that I messaged Dr. Bajents before, and 20 minutes later, once he was out of class, he messaged me back. You have people like
Mhm.
that who are there, and you have me too, dude. You got me on Messenger. You get hold of me pretty quick. But when you don't take advantage of people who want to help you and you feel like you're by yourself, that is one of the
Mhm.
deadliest things for a person who's going through mental or physical help too, or physical
Mhm.
problem too. Um, I think that you being where you are, where you're going to be, and with your experience uh, with the kids, you're going to be that conduit that could help them maybe open it up a little bit. Maybe the kids might have an easier time than the parents, but stick with it.
Mhm.
Stick with it. Let them know that your kids really do need help. And I've seen it both ways, Zaquan. I've seen it where the parents take them to help immediately, and I've seen it as well. Like, oh, you're just doing it for attention. I'm like, yeah. We with my son, we took him immediately the next morning when he was suicidal. We took him to get help, and obviously it worked for a little bit. It worked for a little bit. I don't. I've got to be careful about how I say this. For a parent who kind of pushes that aside, it's very dangerous.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not good. Don't do that. Maybe the kids are trying to get attention, but to me, you don't take that chance. You don't
Mhm.
want what I'm experiencing now. You just don't.
Mhm.
And for you to have that heart, have that experience, you could be on that front line showing parents and families, don't take this for granted. You never know if this is real or
Mhm.
not. Sometimes people, you know this better than anybody. Sometimes people will just say it.
Yeah. Oh. Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I hear it today when people say, I'm going to kill myself if you don't. I was like, okay, maybe we need to rephrase that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can, Zaquan, and we got just a few minutes left, and I want you, number one, thank you for your strength and your courage to get up here. And I'm proud that this is the podcast and that you were willing and that you trusted me enough to do this.
Mhm.
Lord willing, this will help people who listen, and
Yes, sir.
we'll give you the credit for it. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
But if you had one last thing to say to people about mental health and courage or whatever it may be, what would you tell them? If I said, Zaquan, you have the floor, people are listening, what would it be?
Always seek God first. That's the number one thing. And I know that some people who are not Christians or don't have a relationship with Christ, that's okay. But always pray first. Um, and seek help. I know we just went through that, but seek help. Um, Never ever neglect people who are trying to be there for you. That's one of the big mistakes I've done in my life. Was just I wish I would reach out sooner. And I'll also say this too. I've also had sucky therapy. I've had 8 therapists in my life, and I think that there was only 2 or 3 of them that were good. And I will say that,
I've had 4 and 1 stuck around.
and and I also will say that just don't try to fix your problem by yourself. Uh, that's where I dig my hole at too, because I've tried to go to war myself by myself. And Jeremy, and I will say this, the last thing I will say, that is the worst thing you can do. Is go to war with yourself by yourself. That's why you seek God first. That's why you pray first. And that's why you go to your brothers and sisters and go to your people who you're in a circle about. Look, I need help. And I see on TikTok where there's this meme or this guy whose friend called him at 2 a.m. saying, I love you, brother. And the guy's like, love you too, man. Oh, wait, hang on. It clicks for them. It's 2 a.m. Why you're saying love me? No, no. I'm going to your house right now. I'm going to talk to you. Have those friends who are ride or die be there for you. And don't go to war with yourself. Always remain calm if you can. Uh, but more importantly, uh, seek God in everything that you do. Um, Mental health is important. Don't stop talking about it. Don't stop talking about
It's embarrassing. You know this. It's embarrassing, and I think it's not so much embarrassing for you, but for people who hear it for the first time and didn't realize it.
it.
That's probably why people have one of the biggest issues is like we didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to explain it, okay, Zaquan, I've never had cancer. Lord willing, I never will. But I've had people at church here, and I'm pointing out that's where the auditorium is. I've had people with cancer and they try to describe it. I can't relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did have a cancer scare a couple of years ago, and it was scary. It was absolutely scary. Turned out it was just blood, a bad blood test. But
Mm-hmm.
when you go in the room and you see all this cancer treatments and everything like that, you think, oh, good night. What do I got? I can't relate to somebody who had cancer. I can't relate. We had a member who nearly died here, and he was on opioids.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it was the worst thing to get off of. He was in a car wreck. It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't relate to that. So if I'm trying to get up there and explain how depression and anxiety fight each other, and it's kind of like you are in a mud, your truck is in the mud and you can't go anywhere. You're
Mm-hmm.
spinning your tires and then you can't go anywhere. People don't get that because they can't experience it. And that's where empathy really comes into play. Maybe you can't understand it, but the first thing you do is not to dismiss it. And probably the person telling you about these things, they don't understand it either. They don't understand it either. When we get off, I want you to do me a favor, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you have any type of music app?
I do. I do. Apple Music.
Okay, find Josh Groban's River. That was played at my son's funeral, and he experiences. It's hard to compare or contrast depression from one person to the next, but he experiences depression to the point where you think, how could a guy that looks like him sounds like him? But that's typically when it happens. Listen to that and message me back and let me know what you think about it.
Yes, sir.
And
What song was it
it's
again?
called River.
River. Okay.
And I tell people this, that there's certain songs like Kiss from a Rose by Seal that you listen with your eyes closed and the lights down because it's so velvet. It's
Mhm.
velvety smooth. This one you need to be by yourself and just alone in your thoughts.
Mhm.
And tell me what you think about that.
Yes, sir. I will.
Uh, you have a podcast of your own.
Yes, sir.
What is the name of it?
It's called Real Faith, Real World with Z, advice on spirituality, life, and overcoming. Uh, that's on Spotify and Apple Music, Apple Podcasts.
I will get the link up on the show notes if I can find it. If you could send it to me, let me
Yes,
know
sir.
and I'll get it up there.
I have one more thing I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Just real quick, Jeremy, when you came and spoke to us the first time at Heritage, brother, there were not a dry eye in that room, including myself. I had, and me, the person after I got up after you spoke and did the closing prayer. It was tough. But I will say this, brother to brother, your son's story will always be in my heart, and I will say that right now in front of everybody. Your son's story will always be in my heart.
When you put a face and a name to it,
Mhm.
Zaquan, it becomes real.
Yes, sir.
Um, don't I hate statistics. I absolutely I absolutely hate statistics because it never tells the story.
Mhm.
Suicide is real. It's horrible. And it took the life of Connor James McFarland. When you give a name to it, it becomes real.
That's right.
Um, I've tried to tell the story. In fact, I'm thinking about writing an article for our local newspaper called 2 Years Later. Don't know if it ever be published. Don't know if I'll ever finish it or send it in. But whatever the case is, it becomes real. Please listen. Please get out there and talk. Please don't fight. You fight yourself way too much. And Zaquan, you know that as much as
Mhm.
I do.
Mhm.
Uh, but with people like my brother here, we can overcome this, and that's what this is a football podcast, and if you ever want to come back on to talk football, we will be more than you're down in
Yes.
Orlando, so you might have a team or two down in that area. Uh,
Tampa.
um, okay, maybe we don't talk about that then. We got to do this. We got to talk about my Titans and just picking up Tyler Boyd. That's awesome. But anyway, this month I'm that's the reason why when I called it Football's Family, it was a football podcast, but I could talk about a lot of other things.
Mhm.
And I've got like you do, I've got a platform to talk and try to encourage people. This will be published, and I will let y'all I'll let y'all know when this is coming out. Uh, but I'm proud of you, my friend. Thank you
I'm
for
proud of
coming
you.
on,
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for
and
having me.
thank y'all for listening to the Football's Family podcast.